So it sounds like a cult, right? Like you're all like drinking fracking fluid in like together. Like it sounds like a cult.
It is a cult. It's a
Yes,
cult of
cult.
fucking demons.
Yeah, getting cancer to own the libs.
The epoch of incredulity.
Okay, it's going. Explain what the shit is going on with local problems.
So people keep saying that you can't make a difference in politics, which is kind of true. But the reason that you can't make a difference in politics really matters about when in politics you're talking about and where in politics you're talking about. So it's really hard to make a difference on the federal level. I live in Massachusetts. Massachusetts is pretty progressive. I will get almost nothing by pushing my progressive congressperson or my progressive senators to do anything. I wish Ayanna Pressley said she was a socialist. She's still pretty damn great. I wish that Warren and Markey said that they were socialists. Still pretty damn great. Then there's like the county level. So the county level is actually one of the most touchable things. If you care about a position in Middlesex County or in Suffolk County, these are large, difficult campaigns, but they're definitely campaigns that have been won by progressive people, and changing a district attorney makes a huge difference. We would have so much more of a problem in Boston right now if we didn't have Rollins as district attorney. Not that there still aren't problems with the police, but at least we're not prosecuting people for protesting. And it's incredible that we can have that. There was someone similar who ran in Middlesex last time, Donna Pantalone, who now works for Rollins, who didn't quite make it. Not a socialist again, like there's significant problems with just all of these candidates. That said, still great when you're not charging people for resisting arrest. And why were they being arrested again? There's
I think she accomplished something in the sense that like she put the fear of God in a long-term like old guard incumbent and forced her to dramatically move leftward on a lot of the things. And now that she's been forced to, the constituents in Middlesex County are holding her feet to the fire now. They're like, oh, who's this person who's like been in charge for all this time?
There is that.
And she's also not she's not prosecuting ICE detainees.
Which is progress, because she used to do that.
Right, and like better turnaround times on many things and less bail requirements. Not as good as if we had Donna and we didn't have to press, but like, yes, it is true that lost campaigns are still worth it. And I don't want to challenge that one. There's a whole bunch of seats that people don't know exist. This is like the governor council races. The governor council is shit. Like they have put in some incredibly bad judges. The Benevolent Police Association, that's actually what it's called. I don't understand why. Donates to most of these people who then approve super pro-police judges, which makes it really, really hard to try police for anything.
Doesn't sound very benevolent to me.
It's an interesting on-the-nose kind of name, considering the fact that like 98% of officer-involved shootings have not resulted in any kind of consequences between 2013 and 2019. Of the 7,666 instances in which a police officer has killed another human being in this country, 98.7% have resulted in no consequences. So a little on the nose, I would say.
Yeah, kind of worse than that. But yeah, because we don't actually count all of those, we're probably missing some. So there's those. Basically, these people stay in charge because nobody knows about them. I wish that wasn't the case. I wish that we had socialists challenging them. Our challengers are still a shit ton better. Please vote for a challenger. There's like a reason you would want to vote for Helena Fontes and not Edward Terrence, whatever his actual name is.
I mean, this is like the silent, like, this is like the nature of bureaucracy, the silent killer that it is. Actually, I'm pretty sure it was Dick Cheney who said, if you want to make something evil, you got to make it really, really boring.
Yeah, this is all really, really boring stuff. We'll agree with that. Okay, so there's like county level stuff is touchable, and similar randomly districted stuff is definitely touchable. The step below that tends to be towns. So some towns are much easier to influence than others. And this has almost nothing to do with how progressive the town is, and almost entirely how to do with how it's set up. So in Cambridge, we have a city manager position. So the city manager is hired by the city council. And the only power that the city council has over the city manager is veto. I do not pass your budget, or you're fired. We'll get a new one. And otherwise just generally has to propose that the city manager do things. It's hard to run a city. People are very, very cautious about firing city managers because then they might get yelled at by angry constituents who want shoveling to happen faster or something equally annoying and petty. But generally, it's a very hard position to fill. People don't want to have turnover. Turnover is considered bad. City managers get lazy and are not progressive. In fact, tend to be very, very conservative. This is not elected position. It's very hard to influence them. And I don't understand, but they just, the current city manager just ignores the council a lot until they're really pushed on something. You also have similarly problematic setups. So one of them is Boston. Boston has a strong mayor position. The city council in Boston basically votes up and down on what the mayor proposes. That sucks. And the position of mayor being such prominent position in Boston means that Marty Walsh gets a lot of credit for things that he lobbied against in private. So every time there is the census turnout this year was done really, really well, working really hard to involve local organizations by a whole bunch of different progressive groups. There's going to be problems, just the way things are. But in terms of who gets credit, Marty Walsh gets credit. He gets to shake head of the Chinese Progressive Association's hand, and they do photo ops and pass across this gigantic check, gigantic being $7,000, not gigantic, but that is what is seen. So despite being a problem, is very, very popular. Those are very, very hard to touch cities. Other cities are much easier to touch. I don't actually know all of these just because of where I am, but people have definitely had a lot of success recently divesting police from schools, trying to pull out in different places, both in Worcester has done a really good job of getting that actually up. And that really, really depends on where you live. Politics. Oh, and I forgot to mention the state. The state is really, really hard to fix things. Currently, things pass the Senate. They don't pass the House. We have two bodies, just like you do federally in the state of Massachusetts. My legislators are pretty good, but things do not get voted on unless they are brought to the floor by the Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House decides what's brought to the floor, is very powerful, also decides where people's rooms, offices are in the building, and what committees people are on. So no one wants to annoy him. His name is Bob DeLeo. He's the Revere Winthrop dragon-shaped district. And that makes it very, very hard because bills will literally be co-sponsored by more than a majority of people in the legislature and not get voted on unless they are brought up a lot. So this sucks. This really sucks. There's a whole bunch of things for how we'd make this more transparent, how we'd try and see who's actually campaigning for things, how we'd actually get things voted on. But it is incredibly hard to get things through the state system right now, especially because we have a governor who's Republican. We have a veto-proof majority Democratic House and Senate. The reason that things are not brought up to the governor is because they would be vetoed, but because they're not brought up because they would be vetoed, we don't see the governor doing bad stuff. We just see the governor, signing the ban on conversion therapy, even though he didn't seem to care about that and seemed very against it 4 years ago. Yeah, that one. Similar problems.
The way I see it is that the only way to actually get anything done is through ballot access campaigns in the state, because that's something the legislature has less control over, because you can't really control the will of the people as easily as, say, kill a bill in committee. Like the way the minimum wage always works. The only way I have ever seen pay increases in my lifetime in the workforce is through successful ballot campaigns to get the minimum wage higher. That did an end run around the legislature because the legislature wasn't interested in doing that. So fine, we go to the ballot campaign and we get the minimum wage up from $8 an hour in 2012 to $11 an hour in 2015, and then again. Well, actually, this most recent time, the legislature finally decided to do it, but like we're gonna drag it out 6 years. So fine, we pass the minimum wage hike in 60, but we're gonna make it like for less money over time, is like in forms like the increments are gonna be less, and we're gonna drag it out for extra couple years than what the ballot campaign proposed. And so now I'm like, okay, I'll get a raise in like 3 years when like the minimum wage catches up to where I'm currently making.
And it's good that they'll drag it out because, as we saw today, Siberia is 100 degrees. So if they're going to drag out minimum wage, they're not going to do anything about global warming.
Oh, that's an entirely different thing. So the House actually passed 2% renewable energy requirements per year of increase for requirements for Massachusetts. DeLeo and Baker decided to reduce this to 1% in a closed session. Hilariously, the next year there was a ballot question in just DeLeo's district to re-raise it to 2%.
Demon.
Which passed. In addition to there's another thing that they voted on. That district voted to instructed their legislator to vote against raising the salary of the Speaker of the House in comparison to the other legislators, their person being the Speaker of the House. So DeLeo should vote against his own raise.
It's the ultimate subtweet, I find. I find it's like the ultimate subtweet. Like your constituents being like, no, we don't want you to have a raise.
That's right.
Screw you. I remember the last time that Baker DeLeo tried to like push for like a raise for the legislature. I just remember that photo of the three of them at the time, then Senate President Rosenberg, with DeLeo and Baker. They're like standing together, and like the looks on their faces was just priceless. It was like, oh yeah, this is awkward, but let's just pretend that nobody could see us standing right here.
The first time actually that I sent Charlie Baker an angry voicemail was it was when he rode the T for the first time in like, I don't know, probably 5 years, and came to the realization that that it ran like shit, and then did some virtue signaling about how we should get some funding back into the infrastructure in the city.
Oh, that pissed me off so much because, like, yeah, you're a dipshit who never rides the T. Stop pretending to, like, actually give a shit.
It's too busy pocketing the money, putting it into oil investments.
too busy, like, hobnobbing with his venture capitalist buddies from back before he failed to become governor twice. Because I don't think people realize this, but, like, 2014 was, like, Baker's, like, third try at being governor.
What were the other two?
Because he got his ass kicked by Deval Patrick twice. And then Deval Patrick decided, like, you know what? I don't want a third term. I want to go work for Bain Capital.
And also try to run for president, and that didn't pan out.
Yeah, that crashed and burned, and I took great schadenfreude from his failure.
Joe, did you want to talk about masks?
Yeah, like, it's just like rent control about how, like, it's insane that we're actually having this debate at all. Like, maybe in the middle of a pandemic, I don't know, we should, like, the thing that I love about Asian countries is, like, they all have, even though they have different cultures, they all have this, like, culture of, like, every individual is responsible for maintaining the collective well-being.
Yes.
Which is part of why they have crushed, like, the COVID outbreaks, because everyone understands that, like, we need to be wearing masks because it is our responsibility to maintain the health of everybody, because what I do affects everybody else. But we in this country, we live in this such a libertarian country that, like, we're having people make complaints like, oh, having to protect other people infringes upon my right to get everyone else killed.
I don't even think that's, like, collectivism is an Asian thing as much as it's a not white thing. Like, this is just, like, the shittiest part of white capitalistic imperialistic culture is this crazy individualism that isn't true. Like, to the point that, no, you do need to wear a mask or we will all die. Sorry.
Well, I'm not saying collectivism is only an Asian thing. I'm just saying that, like, it seems to be, like, right now during this pandemic, it's like all of these Asian countries are stepping up because they're all like, let's not kill each other.
Well, Iceland also is completely COVID-free now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, Iceland stepped up. Iceland's
they're right next to the fire, that is the Arctic right now.
Yeah,
but besides, like beholding like the bonfire that is now the Arctic, and like, oh right, we're all gonna die from like sea level rise because we're an island. Besides that, like the fact that we can breathe the air safely, that I guess that's something nice. That's like some kind of good news.
Maybe the material realities are the reasons why they put all their bankers in jail.
I know, I love that. I was in middle school when that happened, and it was like the most beautiful thing ever. It's like, wait, you guys actually threw all the bankers in jail? Why can't we do that? Oh, wait a minute, our bankers bought like the people in the positions of power who are supposed to be like holding them accountable. So I guess that's just not going to happen.
So Iceland has done some things right. They're a model to strive towards. But like, like we both shared that article, Joe, the headline that said like COVID, like 80% would be like
80% would be fine. Like,
yeah,
like 80% reduction. It's like everyone just wore a fucking mask. But like we've turned into this culture where it's like, oh, it's the virtues. It's like homicidal virtue signaling. Where like you have like the MAGA people be like, no, like if you wear a mask, you're a pussy, and like it's like this thing like you're trying to show to other people on the right that like it's like, oh, it's like it's the new virtue signaling aspect of the culture war that we've descended into.
The continuation of seatbelts and bike helmets.
I think this is really like the culmination of like 2 decades of like anti-science and anti-intellectualism on the right. But now it's it's culminated in this whole like, instead of it being like, oh, we just don't believe in climate change, or we don't believe in like the right to choose because we don't believe in science, we're now just actively getting people killed. And it just doesn't seem to bother anyone.
Yeah, so there's also a problem here that what ended up happening was the cities, which are mostly Democratic, or at least side towards the Democratic Party in the not Republican sense, not towards the progressive sense, got hit first. And like we saw how bad it was. Like if you are a friend of a doctor, here. Whereas people who are in more rural areas, who are in areas that like are oblivious to the outside world, weren't immune. They just didn't see it immediately. And for some reason, there is this interesting but terrifying mind wars on the right that tries to pretend that everything you don't see directly isn't real. And that's hitting people really hard right now because it still is real and you could have fixed it, and it's going to get harder the longer you wait. But it's not hitting you immediately, which is the same problem that we're seeing with global warming. It's not a problem if Arizona gets 2 degrees warmer. Like, it's a problem, but they don't care about the 40 people who died of heat stroke. It is a problem if the Alaska melts. Like, that just is a problem. It's mud, it's frozen mud. We have a problem here to a much more substantial degree.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. It's like, it's kind of piggybacks off what I was saying, and like how I do agree that like you're very correct, Kit, when you said like it just the right seems to be like, oh, it's like we can't see it, doesn't exist. I remember when Senator Jamie Langford of Oklahoma, famously in 2014, he walked into the well of the Senate with a snowball and was like, "Here, I have snowball. Therefore, climate change isn't happening because I have a snowball in my hand."
It's like the time senators drank like the unpasteurized milk to prove that you could drink that and it was fine, and they all got sick and threw up.
My favorite like people in positions of power, like drinking like really toxic things to prove a point, is John Hickenlooper with the fracking fluid. And I actually watched the clip of that on Sunday night while I was at work.
Isn't that shit like gasoline? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. He's so much in the pocket of the oil industry that he literally drank fracking fluid to prove to like environmental oversight people that it was safe.
It's worse than gasoline. There's like benzene and other.
Yeah, did he immediately have to get his stomach pumped? My God.
The actual clip of him like being asked by then Senator Franken, like during like a committee hearing, is like, so it sounds like a cult, right? Like you're all like drinking fracking fluid. in like together. Like it sounds like a cult.
It is a cult. It's a
The
cult
death
of
cult.
fucking demons.
Yeah, getting cancer to own the libs.
Yes.
Drinking
It's the death cult called capitalism.
to own the lips.
It's also really interesting just because it's this, like, it is a cult, but most cults started pretty small. And this is like a much larger expansion of these thought bubbles that people aren't escaping. And I think fracking is one of the like first really, really bizarre ones where it's clearly bad and we're not measuring it because we cut federal government's ability to fund that and didn't require environmental groups to do it or require the damn industries to do it. So there's not the data in the same way there was for other things prior to fracking, but also this is some shit stuff.
Like, there's actually a very good chance. I took like a couple climate science classes in college, and there's actually very good, like fracking, like you run the risk of like permanently contaminating the water supply. There to the degree that like water treatment plants can't solve the problem. You are literally, or you have like all these instances of like people turning on the taps and the water catches on fire. What is this, 1830s Manchester, England?
Methane.
Causing like mini earthquakes and shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was
Honestly,
that?
I do. There's so many death cults. Like, I feel like the whole masks thing with the right is like this death cult to own the libs. Hey, I'm not wearing my mask. How do you feel about that, Snowflake?
Then there's this dynamic where you have like rural farming communities, and these individuals feel like the government is overreaching because they have to maintain their own wells and their own farming equipment and all that. And then a company will come along and give them money to become test subjects for some oil project or some fracking project, and basically paying these people off. I forgot what I was going to say.
It sounded like where you're going was like, oh, we're like bribing these people to like keep them like docile.
But it does make people in rural areas have been abandoned in several different ways by governmental groups. They're, approached by some gigantic farming company that convinces them to build these gigantic, expensive pieces of infrastructure to raise chickens in. They go into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. They have to every year try and maintain these chicken houses. And then 10 years later, their demand, if they want to keep raising chickens and actually pay off this debt, they have to refurnish whatever. So they hold all the liabilities, whereas the company owns the chickens and the produce and everything, owns all of the assets. And somehow this is legal. People are incredibly stuck. They're in an incredible amount of debt. They don't trust the government that doesn't protect them, then don't seem to realize that this is capitalism and like what else is going to protect you. The government is supposed to be yours. But these incredibly powerful groups can lobby all of their local elected officials. And you end up with this incredibly dangerous, toxic cycle that you can't trust anybody. Therefore, guns in order to feel stronger. And then nobody can trust you because
you have a gun.
You're traumatized and now have a gun.
It's a violent cycle of capitalism, of one begets the other. You constantly get forced to recreate the toxic cycles of consumption and then death, and then you just keep getting further and further behind. Where actually, I think the way Kate mentioned it is like how they own is kind of how the corporation takes all of the profit, none of the risk. It's kind of like what has happened to government more broadly, where the government as an institution has assumed all of the risk and none of the reward. It's kind of what happened with the tech industry, where the government came up with all the research and development, and then the private industry swooped in and took all the rewards from that, while assuming none of the risk.
Yep. Also pharma and every other industry in the world, like, that makes money in the U.S.
I think I toggled mute in the wrong off on cycle. Where I remembered where I was going with the original train of thought was in contrast to this, allowing private industry to write the rules and basically buy off these people. we were talking about positive models of the government utilizing its resources to handle the COVID crisis. And I mean, I've talked about this a few times, but the response that Vietnam had was phenomenal in that they were able to repurpose part of the textile industry to manufacture masks for every citizen from the jump. They covered the salaries of the people who were forced to stay home, like I guess I should say, who stayed home. It was a peaceful process. It wasn't this authoritarian dictate to stay home. It was the citizens basically heeding the warnings of the Vietnamese government and being able to do so because they weren't just going to fall through the cracks like so many Americans have. And funding went into the medical sector so that there would be beds for people if they would need treatment. And ultimately they didn't need to because transmission was so low. As the last time I checked, there were no COVID cases. And that's on the border with China. So the combination of masks for everybody at either little cost or no cost, rerouting funding to prepare for response if needed, and lastly, creating a social safety net so that people would be able to temporarily not go into work and thus continue the spread of COVID.
Yep.
Like, what social safety net in this country? What social safety net? Like,
see, America,
the
this
extent-
could be us, but you plan
to
it.
the extent that we even have a welfare state at this point, because Bill Clinton blew that up 20 years ago with a big idiotic grin, famously proclaimed with this idiotic grin of his that the era of big government is over as we abolish the program that helps very poor single parents with financial handouts.
What bill was this? Was this a part of NAFTA?
No, this was the welfare reform of 1996, in which they basically abolished the aid to families with dependent children, AFDC, which was basically like a program to give small handfuls of money, like crumbs, to very poor single parents with children. And now it's been replaced with the current program we have now, temporary assistance to needy families, which is means-tested to hell, is basically useless. And the real kicker is there is a maximum lifetime limit in which you are allowed to use that system. You get to use it for 5 years, and then you're done for life, I guess.
Who introduced that program?
Bill Clinton.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So oh, wow. Even the Democrats are bad, folks.
Oh, I could go on for an hour about all of the bad things Bill Clinton did while he was in office. I could go on for at least an hour.
Let's make that a different episode.
Yeah.
I mean, we can end on some good news. Apparently, baseball is coming back, if anybody cared.
Oh, I do. I love it. And also,
they're going to have a 60-game season, Joe.
I am a massive baseball fan. That is actually the only other thing that rivals my obsession with politics in a healthy way, at least. And also, in other good news, Jamal Bowman, who is the primary challenger to the House Foreign Affairs Committee chairman, has a 4,000 vote lead as of a couple minutes ago.
But Booker is trailing McGrath by 9 points right now. Not good.
You know what?
Not ideal.
Last time I mispronounced Hassan Lecky's name, and I want to get some proper plugs in. I want to get some proper plugs in for local candidates that we should be supporting right now.
Plug them.
Erica Uderhoven, great candidate. She's an economist by trade.
Recently on Current Affairs.
Yeah, actually, I listened to her interview on Current Affairs just while I was at work on Sunday. Excellent. It just, even though I've talked to her over Zoom calls a few times, it made me like her 20% more.
Got a lot of passion. I've been on those calls too.
Anna Callahan in the Middlesex 34th, if I have to remember off the top of my head. She's also a very good candidate. She's going up against a Democrat who's not the best, but could be worse. And who Fuck, who else is it off top?
Okay, so Katia Sharp, who Erica is running against, is running a smear campaign against Erica and has brought her to court for not being a Democrat. Unclear what Katia's argument for why she should be on the ballot is.
Someone for not
but
being
like that is the level we're going for here. There's like
fuck.
This is not just like could be worse. No, this is pretty bad. Yeah, that.
The boomer Democrats rear their heads because I feel like that's the boomer thing to be like the complaint is like, oh, you're not being a real Democrat. Like anytime you like propose something like that Democrats nominally are supposed to stand for, like I don't know, expanding the social safety net. You're not being a good Democrat by not getting in line and shutting the fuck up.
Yeah. So anyway, Katia Sharp is a problem, and not just like a small problem.
Oh, to clarify, when I meant could be worse, I was referring to Anna Callahan's opponent.
Oh, yeah. No, Christine is fine. Like, whatever.
You were trying to end this on a positive note.
I was being positive, kind of, ish.
Do we have any last plugs?
Yeah, my cats.
It was
Indian Squirrel.
Jesse's got a good
Indian
cat.
Squirrel 2020. And as always, Ed Markey.
Better than Joe Kennedy.
Hell yeah, he's actually
Don't even get me started.
A good incumbent.
I know he's like one of the 4 Democrats in Congress. Or he's one of the 4 Democrats in the Senate who isn't like complete shit.
Right, and according to the still unnamed Michael Brooks interviewee, the only normal dude in the Senate.
Only normal dude in the Senate, including Bernie. Bernie's not normal.
All right, I guess Bernie.
Yeah.
Bernie and Ed Markey are the 2.
Yeah, I can see that. Like the only 2, because I mean, like,
Good. Okay.
because every other like Senate Democrat is like either weird, a la Cory Booker style, or just like terrible and a sociopath like Amy Klobuchar.
Like Cory Booker also.
But Cory Booker, honestly, like he always looks to me like the look on his face is always like he always looks like he's about to. He could like possibly like strangle you to death with his bare hands. He always doesn't look in his eyes.
Oh no, that's Ed Markey. Ed Markey has resting bitch face.
Oh, he
so
did,
wonderful.
Absolutely, he does. But like most people in Malden, like seem to have resting bitch face.
I feel like Cory Booker always looks like he just dropped something really expensive.
All right, that's a good place to end it. I just quickly want to plug comrade-rosie.org. That's our website. If you're curious, please visit it. And yeah, that's your epoch for the week.
Oh, I do actually have one last plug for.
Go! Okay. Go.
We can edit this part. We can edit it to make it work.
Fucking go!
Alex Morse in Massachusetts First. He's taking on the House Ways and Means chair, who is a piece of shit. Richard Neal. Neal is a shill of the pharma industry, the financial industry. He actually, Neal last year killed a bill that had bipartisan support to end surprise billing, like on health insurance, at the last possible second, because he takes a shit ton of money from Cardinal Health, among others. Cardinal Health and Aetna.
All right.
And Alex Morse is, he doesn't really call himself a socialist, but he's pretty good for like a guy who's only 30. He was elected mayor of Holyoke, which is a city in Western Mass, at the age of like 22.
Oh.
Which is like, that's pretty impressive for like a city of 40,000 people to become mayor at like 22.
Other good candidates, Jordan Meehan is running against Kevin Rogers, actually a socialist, has like some weird properties, supported Warren for some reason, but like still an incredible like challenge to someone who hasn't done anything in the legislature in Massachusetts for a while.
An incumbent who's beyond useless.
That.
All right. Thank you, guys. Hopefully that's all our plugs. I'm going to wait for a second. Yes. Okay. Yeah. comrade-rosie.org. Please visit that website. And that's your epoch. Good night, everyone.